One. All right, sports fans, it's PBZ Sports Chaos. Hey, PB, last weekend, conference championships. Let's do a little post-mortem. By the way, do I remember correctly? Did you pick the Bills to beat the Chiefs, even though we said we were not picking against the Chiefs?
I know. I went against my everything that I've ever talked about and went out on a limb. It wasn't a good limb though.
But hey, let's go into that real quick. Buffalo, I thought, played a really good game, except for one silly thing. Why did they take James Cook out of the game where they needed him in the game? He was having an awesome game. He was averaging like 7 yards a catch, a play. Never mind a catch, but a
Yeah.
play. And yet he's not in there in crucial time. That's a coaching mistake. Do you agree?
Yes, I do. I do.
Sean
And
McDermott got outcoached by Andy Reid all day last week, and that's the single reason why they lost. I know Dalton McCabe, who, by the way, I love Dalton McCabe. He catches that ball 99 out of 100 times. For some
yeah.
reason, he dropped that ball. I know it was a difficult catch, but still, it hit him in the hands, hit him in his chest. He has to
Yeah.
catch the ball, right?
Yep. It's a catchable ball for sure. And hey, let's not forget that way that Allen got that ball off too. That was amazing that he was
Oh, my God.
pass
Yeah.
rush. He was on his ability to get that ball off. The only thing that made it difficult was he did have to stop in his tracks and come back to the ball. And I just don't, I think his timing was a little bit off. But to your point, you're an NFL tight end. The ball's in your hands. You got to hold on to it.
Yeah, yeah, and I love that guy coming out. I think it was Stanford when he came out. I thought it was a great
U-
draft pick by them. I think
Utah. He was out of Utah.
Utah. There you go.
Yeah.
So, all right. Having said that, does Stanford did Casey improve? Did he impress you at all in that game? I mean, personally, I'm not sure I was impressed.
Yeah, I mean, their defense was impressive, but obviously Buffalo had the right recipe. They held Kelsey to like two catches for like 19 yards or something like that, right?
Right?
So I think they had the recipe in
Good game
place.
plan. Good game plan. Take Kelsey away. You have
Yeah,
to win, right?
they yep, they couldn't really run the ball. Pacheco didn't do anything on the ground. Hunt did a little bit, but nothing major. Like Kansas City's offense really didn't do much, and they were just opportunistic, and their defense held Buffalo at bay. I think that's really when that was my key to the game was their defense had to show up and hold Buffalo to what they did in that mid-20s range, for points. So
By
kudos
the
to
way, a
them,
little
man.
fun fact. Now, Mr. Patrick Mahomes has won his 17th playoff game, postseason game. He's second to not only the Mr. Tom Brady. What do you say, Tom Brady? How many do you have? Oh, you have 34 postseason wins? Does Pat Mahomes ever catch him, you think?
I mean, this is like that, just like that Belichick Brady recipe. I think this Andy Reid Mahomes recipe is still going to be, carry them further because they're going to stop losing guys. Kelsey's only going to play another year tops, right? They still haven't figured out they don't have a stud running back. Um, they don't really have stud receivers. They have a nice complement of receivers. And we know Rashi Rice is going to be coming back next year, and Xavier Worthy's going to be in his second year at that point. So they could emerge as, alpha type wide receivers. Um, but that scares me because they're doing it without all that. So what happens when they do get a stud running back? What happens when they do have one of these receivers emerge as a stud receiver and you still have Mahomes and you still have Reed? So yeah, I think this is a dynasty in the making. I think it could last as long as the Patriots dynasty did, which we know stretched over 20 years. They had a big lull there. They had like a
Yep.
10 plus year
Yep.
lull without a Super Bowl, and then they came back in. I don't know if Kansas City will have that big of a lull, but yeah, I think if anybody's going to do it, it's going to be him.
By the way, Andy Reid, speaking of him, he now ties Don Shula as the second most Super Bowl appearances with 6. And if he wins this one, it would give him, if I'm not mistaken, 5, right? Because he lost one game to the Tampa Bay Bucks, correct? So, oh no, 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 4. I'm sorry, because he lost one when he was Philadelphia to the Pats, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
there we go. So we'll see. But Andy Reid's a little bit on the upside as well as far as his age. So I don't know how long he'll still keep coaching. We'll see about that. Um, You mentioned a good point though, PB, about wide receivers. I don't think I'm not. You know what? KC receivers are okay, but what I'm going to say about the receivers, if you have a great quarterback, and the Patriots are getting all sorts of flack this year because they don't have great receivers for Drake May. Sometimes a great quarterback makes receivers look great. Julian Edelman would not be almost a Hall of Fame player playing for I don't know who it maybe
Right.
who knows, but he
Right.
looks like a Hall of Fame player for Tom Brady, correct?
Yeah. No, Brady did that a lot. I mean, think about guys like, even Chris Hogan and Danny
Yes.
Amendola. And, he made guys look good. I agree with you 100%.
So to that point, um, Mahomes has got Schuster. I happen to like Juju Schuster. I think he's a good receiver. Sky Moore's coming back. He's got receivers and DeAndre D Hop. He's got some talented receivers that he can make look awesome. Anyways, on the roster. So I'm very afraid of that when we talk about the Super Bowl next week. By the way, let's talk about the other team, Philadelphia. They were absolutely dominant against the Washington Commanders. No,
Yeah.
yes, right?
I was very surprised. I thought that was an easy cover. I thought the Commanders were going to play close, and Daniels just showed me real flashes of brilliance. Hurts hasn't been showing me, but it just goes to show you that package of a team. When you talk about offensive line, defensive line, corners, those two rookie corners they have. I know one of them was hurt, but still, they just man, they played their butts off, and,
Yeah.
and they deserve it, and they deserve it. And I think they can give Casey a run for their money in the Super Bowl.
The single guy that's going to be the difference in the Super Bowl, and we'll talk about it next week, is Saquon Barkley. In my opinion, I still say he's the MVP. He won't get it because the quarterback's going to get it. But Saquon Barkley is the MVP in the league this year, and he's the MVP right now going into the Super Bowl. We'll see what happens. All right, let's talk about some coaching hires because this obviously we touched on this a little last week. Let's start with the Pats. I think Mike Vrabel's a home run. And then they go out and they get Josh McDaniels as the offensive coordinator. And they got a defensive coordinator. They got Terrell Williams came from, I believe it was in Tampa last year, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember now. Maybe Titans before. I think that's a home run. What do you think?
Yep, I do. I think of all the coaching hires, I would put him and maybe Ben Johnson. Except Ben Johnson doesn't have the previous experience that Vrabel has with Tennessee. So I think if you look at the 6 or 7 or whatever it is, coaching vacancies that have been filled, I put Vrabel right in the top 1 or 2 for sure.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with you on Ben Johnson. I think as a coordinator, he's only been a coordinator, I think, for 4 years. You have to have a lot more experience than that in this league. It's been proven out over the last 6 years. You hire a coordinator. Look at the Jets. They've been hiring coordinators for the last 3 years. They fire them every year, right? Coordinators
Yeah,
with 1 or 2 years
yeah,
experience.
right.
Josh
But
McDaniels was not a good head coach in Denver and then with the Raiders, right?
right.
So at the end of the day, I'm not so sure hiring a short-term coordinator is the best way to go. I feel bad for the Bears. I think they have a lot of talent. I'm not so sure Caleb Williams is the star to be, but
Yeah,
at the end of the day, Ben Johnson's
yeah.
not the answer. I don't think. I
I,
don't think so.
I,
But what you say?
I was gonna say I feel less bad for the Bears than I do for the Jets and the Jags. I think the Bears and some of that might have to do with the roster and the talent and the pieces that are around him. But I think Ben Johnson can get creative with those guys, and I think he could be an up and coming coach. He could be like the next like Sean McVay or something like that. Like I do have confidence in Ben Johnson's ability to do something with the Bears over the next. He's not going to do it next year. Tough division, but over several years, I think they could make a difference.
Here's where I disagree with you about the Jets coach, though. Aaron Glenn has been coaching since he got out of the game. He's an NFL player that went into coaching right away. He's been on the sidelines for like 20 years now. Aaron Glenn, and that's a great defensive team. The Jets have talent on defense. Their offense is suspect. Aaron Glenn, I think, is going to be after Vrabel, Aaron Glenn's going to be the guy.
Okay, I just feel like Aaron Glenn just showed you what he did with the team in Detroit, that their defense was nothing special. I mean, when what's his name was on the field, Hutchinson was on the field, they had, they looked sexy and all that, but if you look statistically, they weren't a good defense. So
They
here's
didn't
a
have play.
guy.
They didn't have play. I think the Jets have better personnel than the Lions do on defense side of the ball. I
Probably.
honestly do.
I would agree. I would agree with that. We'll see. I just think the Jets are just destined for losing. That's all.
Well, that's the Jets, right? We want them to be that way. We're the Patriots fans. All right, let's talk about the Cowboys. As you know, I'm a Cowboy fan. Everybody's down on the Cowboys hire Brian Schottenheimer. I'm not so sure. The guy comes from a career coaching family. Marty Schottenheimer was a damn good football coach. His father. He learned from his father. I think he's going to be a decent coach. I know everybody says, oh, he's a Jerry puppet. Sure. Everybody's a Jerry puppet in that system because Jerry controls everything. But I think Brian Schottenheimer is going to be all right. What do you think?
I'm going to disagree with that one. I
All
think
right.
that the Cowboys are right in the bottom of the lit. I might put the Jets ahead of them. I'm not sure I'm putting the Jags ahead of them in terms of the
Yeah,
coaching.
I can't put the Jags.
Yeah, not in how I think they're going to finish on it, but just the coaching moves. I just think they have to really mix up the culture there. And I think when you go internal with your hire, and granted, as an OC, he did pretty good. I mean, not this year, but in past years, that team's been a top five offense. Dak's healthy, firing on cylinders, all that kind of stuff. But I just don't, I just don't think the internal hire is going to change the culture of that organization. And I think Jerry Jones is also part of that systemic process here. That the Cowboys
That's
are
the
just the
problem, BT.
Cowboys.
You're right on the money. Jerry has to hire an outside GM, not from the culture of the family, right? At the end of the
Yeah.
day, that's
That's
a
what I
problem.
think it is.
I
Yeah.
think Brian would be okay with a GM from outside. But when
Yeah.
Jerry's calling the shots and Brian's going to be a puppet right now,
Yeah.
right? He's going to be a
It's
puppet, much like TB is my puppet right now. That's the problem. But I think he's a sharp guy. He comes from a coaching family. It's too bad that Jerry is a GM. That's the problem. That's the
yeah.
problem at the end of the day, right?
Yeah. No, I agree. And then you look at the division now with the Commanders, obviously, and Daniels being what will look like a future, team that can compete every single year for the division and for the playoffs. And then you get the Eagles who have proven that they can be a stud team in that division. And let's see what happens with the Giants. If they get a quarterback and you have that, and you can hook up Malik Neighbors with some really good quarterback, and that could
Correct.
create
Yes.
some
Yes.
interesting stuff with the Giants. I would say the Giants and Cowboys right now are the two teams that are going to be fighting for last place in that division next year. I
Uh,
don't think it's
I would agree. I would. But I will say this one thing. Regards to the Commanders, I think they're 2 years too soon. I think Jaden Daniels took them too far too soon, and they might miss out on some draft potential because they're up on the lower end of the draft board at the end of the day.
okay.
Maybe that's my thought. Similar to Houston. Houston this year, granted they made the playoffs, they made a good run at the end of the year, but they could have used another year of rebuilding that team and helping
Agree.
CJ Stroud out. So we'll
I
see.
agree.
By the way,
Okay.
I will add one coach who I think is going to be solid hire. And this guy would not have made sure he was hired if he was not sure. I
Pete
think Pete
Carroll.
Carroll is going to have a rebound. He's going to be on Avengers tour to show the NFL, including the Patriots, who fired him to hire Belichick, that they were all wrong about Pete Carroll. You know
Yeah.
what? Pete Carroll is just a friggin' winner. Whatever you
Yeah.
do, it's just a friggin' winner, you know?
Yeah. And let's not forget about this either. That AFC West is going to be the best division of head coaches. You're going to have Andy Reid. You're going to have Harbaugh with the Chargers. You're going to have Sean Payton with the Broncos, and now Pete Carroll, all in the same division. That's
Hall of
bad
Fame,
news,
Hall of Famers right there potentially.
right? And that's where you have the downside of Pete Carroll, because Pete Carroll's not walking into the AFC South or the NFC South, right,
Right,
where he could just
right.
make a difference right away. He's going to compete with those three other coaches and those three other teams that are really good,
Yeah.
and
That's,
have you're talking about, and let's talk about the quarterbacks too. You're talking about Herbert, you're talking about Bo Nix, who had a great rookie year, and then Patrick Mahomes, and you don't have one. So I don't know. I still think they're the favorites to finish last in that division next year, but
by the way, wild rumor out there in the street. Russ could return to play with Pete. Russell
that would
Wilson.
be interesting. That would be interesting.
That would be a good matchup, I think, at the end of the day. End of the day. All right. So next week we're gonna talk Super Bowl. We're gonna talk all the prop bets and all the other stuff that goes to the Super Bowl, right?
Yep. Yep.
I'm looking forward to it. Right now. We'll make our real predictions next week, but who are you leading towards, PB?
Man, I almost want the next week to decide that. I'm it's hard for me to lean. I mean, if I'm leading with my head, I gotta say Chiefs. I got burnt last week by veering off my Chiefs thing, and I said I'm not picking against them until they lose. And guess what? They haven't lost. So why wouldn't I just stick with what's right and go with the Chiefs? But I could change my mind. I know they're favored, right, by a point and a half or so. So maybe I could change over the course of the week and go to the Eagles, but we'll
Well,
see.
by the way, though, the football power index favors Philadelphia. I know that Vegas, the point spread, favors Kansas City, but the
Yeah.
FBI is 55% says Eagles.
The
Here's what I'm going to say real quick, real quick. Dan Campbell was not going to win a Super Bowl, in my opinion, because he just makes stupid mistakes. Nick Sirianni makes stupid mistakes. If the Philadelphia Eagles had a qualified head coach like Bill Belichick, Jimmy Johnson, blah blah blah, they win this game. He's
yeah, yeah. I
Nick
agree with you.
Sirianni's the wild card.
Yeah, top to bottom, they probably have the better roster. And to your point, the chance of Sirianni making a stupid mistake is way higher than Andy Reid making a stupid mistake.
All
And
day
let's
long,
not
right?
forget, the Eagles had defensive lapses this year, and Kansas City really didn't.
No,
So
their defense has been rock solid every game.
rock solid. They haven't had any lapses. Philly could have a lapse,
I agree
So
with you.
that's yeah. We're
Yeah,
getting too far ahead of ourselves. We're going to save it for next week.
I'm looking forward to it, buddy. All right, we'll talk next week.
Sounds good.